Hi, I'm Ben Lucas and welcome to another Tuts Plus tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to create a dynamic photo for a rescue helicopter team. This is the photo that we'll be creating today. This was a composite of several different photos, and I'm going to show you today how we can blend in our subjects to our background to get a realistic composite. So here's the original photo that we're going to composite. There are a couple of things that need to happen to be able to put this convincingly into our scenery. First, we need to cut them out accurately, but after that, we need to get all of these shadows and put the shadows into our scene. Some people prefer to draw their own shadows, but I find it's a lot easier, a lot faster, and more realistic to use the shadows that were already in the scene, and I'm going to show you how we do that. In addition to the shadows, we also have these little pools of blood, and we're going to put those into the scene as well. But take a look at this floor. See how it's a very flat concrete floor, and now look at the finished poster. They are on snow. The snow has divots and surface and texture to it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to add that texture onto our flat floor shadows to get a realistic look. Alright, let's dive right in. Here's the background we're going to be working with, and here are the people. What I have here is I have a layer with just the people cut out, and here is the original photo, so you can see how that places into the scene. So make a duplicate so you have the original photo and so you have the cutout. The cutout you're going to use on normal, but the duplicate in the background is the one that we're going to be working with to get all these shadows. Let me show you how we do that really quick. Go ahead and add a black layer mask to this layer. You can do it by alt clicking or option clicking if you're on a Mac to create a black layer. Just click the layer mask right there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab a brush and make it nice and soft. We'll set the flow a little bit lower so that we can build up that shadow area, and paint in white on the mask. So wherever you paint in white, that's where it's going to show, just like that. So you can go and just very roughly kind of bring in the shadows like that, just using a nice soft brush. You don't have to be super accurate on this part. Something like that does nicely. Now there are a couple things here. One, if you're not very accurate, that's okay because we're going to get rid of most of it. But if you want to fix it now, all you have to do is hit X, and that switches your foreground and background color. And then whenever you paint in black, you can hide it and clean up your mask. So I'm going to clean up kind of all the parts here where I'm not really seeing a shadow. I'm going to leave that part right there. We want some of that blood texture. Get some of the shadows in there. And leave some there. Okay. When in doubt, you can always leave a little bit more and get rid of it later. So now we have some shadow detail and some textures. That's all there is to it. But we're going to add that shape. Remember I said it was a flat concrete surface, and we need to make a divoted, textured surface so it matches with the snow. To create a displacement map, add a new black and white layer, so that way it's just black and white, and let's just flatten the image. Discarding's fine because we're about to undo this anyway. Hit Control-Shift-S or Command-Shift-S on a Mac, and let's save it as displacement map. I already have one, but let's save it as displacement map demo. And make sure you save it as a Photoshop document. Even though it's flattened, it needs to be a document, not a JPEG. And click Save. So let's go back to our document. In your history, just click back until you have color again. There we go. So now we can turn on this layer, this shadow layer. Notice how I didn't get super accurate cutout, but it doesn't really matter because it's going to be covered up by the people, this layer here. So let's do our displacement map. Go Filter, Distort, Displace. Let's put it on about 20 each, and you can leave the default settings here and click OK. Now it's going to ask you for the displacement map. If you remember, we made a displacement map here. So let me explain really quick while it's chugging through that. What the displacement map does is wherever it is black, it shifts all the pixels one direction. Wherever it's white, it shifts the pixels the other direction. That gives you this interesting rippled texture that directly matches up with the layer underneath it, our snow. So now when we turn on our main layer, there's a little bit of cleaning up that we'll have to do just right in here, but notice how around the snow texture it did a pretty good job of distorting it. You can see ripples. It doesn't look like flat concrete anymore. So to get this layer how we want it, let's flip it to multiply. So now we have all of our shadows, and all of the shadows are actually lining up with all the divots. See that? If there's something that you missed, or if the displacement did something a little strange like it did right here, just go ahead and click on it, grab your clone stamp tool, and you can just clone stamp out the offending areas just like that. Let's check. It doesn't look like there's any other problem spots. It did a pretty good job. And now, just by changing it to multiply, we have a ton of realistic shadows that are actually the way he was laying. If you think it's too strong, or if you don't like the way it came out, you can always lower the opacity, or go in and fine-tune it with your brush, just painting in white on that mask if you want more, or black on the mask if you want less. Notice how the blood right here, it's pretty dark. Multiply isn't what I want. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this layer. So now we have another displaced layer here. And we're going to change this one to soft light. See how it really brightens the whole thing up? And let's get rid of the blood on the background here so you can kind of see it show through. It might be a little much. We can just paint in white or black. And then this is the layer with our blood, and since it's on soft light and we don't want it on soft light for all the shadows, just the blood, you can just paint in black and get rid of all those shadow areas. So now you just have one layer that is just affecting our little spots of blood. Now that we have our shadows, let's do the second part that really brings them into the scene here. That would be a lighting enhancement. So I went ahead and just added a lens flare right here, and I'm going to show you how we can use this lens flare to really bring them into the scene. As you can see, when I turn it on, it's very distracting. We don't want the lens flare on all of them, so we want the lens flare behind them. All you have to do is control click or command click on the layer that just contains them to select them, and then we can add a mask by just clicking, and it will automatically add a mask. Notice how the mask is backwards? That's okay. Just hit Control I or Command I on a Mac, and that gets you the mask we want, where you just have a light flare that's behind them. Now, you can see that it kind of brought them into the shadows here. The lens flare really wouldn't do that, and it's not affecting any of the areas of them that you would normally affect. So go ahead and zoom in and make sure you use a very soft brush, soft as you can get. Let's lower the flow so we can really build it up and start small. I'm going to put mine a little bit higher just so I can build a little faster to show you for this demo. Let's paint in white, and I'm going to show you what we're doing here. So what we're doing is we're just adding in a little bit of that flare right on the edges. So we're just adding in a little bit of flare right there, wherever you would actually get some lens flare and some lighting. Basically, wherever you see a highlight, you want to paint a little bit of that lens flare in, because these highlights are supposed to be coming from that sun. So we can just paint just like that, and make sure you do it on the other pilot as well, a little bit on the shoulders here, anywhere where the light would be leaking, just like that, and a little bit in here because it's an empty spot. There's some light coming through, some on his arm, some on his leg. There we go. Now, you might be thinking, well, it's a decent job, but what if I want to fix it? The problem is, if you start painting in black, then you're going to get rid of the flare everywhere, not just on top of them. Well, if you control-click on the layer of them, then you have them selected. And now, by painting it in black, you can only paint inside the selected area. So you can very easily fix and fine-tune that flare to get it exactly how you want it. I've noticed that it's a lot easier to do a really quick pass and then go back and fix a mistake, and it's a lot faster than it is to try and do it right the first time around. So by just leaving them selected and switching back and forth between white to really bring in that flare and black to get rid of it where you don't need it, you can fine-tune how the light looks. So by having these lighting elements wrapping around your subject and by having realistic shadows from the original photo that actually contour to the scene that you're putting them in, you can get a lot more realistic composite. So let me show you up close. Here is without our lighting enhancements or our displacement, just the person popped in and finished. I'm Ben Lucas. This tutorial is for Tuts Plus. Thanks for watching.